Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Okay, so it's been a while since we've seen Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. So if you guys don't remember, I had been covering this before Megas Month, and now I'm back to record it again. But in case the end of the first season showcased that they had that Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, the second incarnation, had actually broken up after Fred realized that Mayor Jones wasn't actually his dad, and so Fred just went off to go find his parents, and this ultimately resulted in Mystery Inc. breaking up with of course Daphne being upset that Fred broke her heart and leaving Mystery Incorporated shortly after. And then Scoob and Shaggy got sent off to a farm and military school respectively. So yeah, they wound up. So yeah, basically, all the entire group had just been splitting up in a rather semi-permanent way. And this episode does kind of create a situation where they have to get back together. And also something interesting that I should mention. Starting from the second season, they've started using recaps to remind you what happened for the previous episode. If I had to guess, they realized that it was going to get a lot more difficult to keep track of what was going on, and they decided that recaps were necessary. And the first season didn't really have those because it did have an overarching narrative, but it was mostly a bunch of disconnected mysteries that didn't really have anything to do with one another. Whereas this one is a lot more narrative based, and the second season is going to go into a lot more detail with stuff. So they figured that a recap would be important. But in case the episode actually opens up with Crystal Cove actually being terrorized, and the episode opens up with a villain that is named the Crybaby Clown. But the Crybaby Clown is currently driving around Crystal Cove, fittingly enough, he's flinging baby bottle shaped bombs at everybody, and it's just blowing up business after business. And it's at one point, and he's just kind of flying through town, and it's at one point where Sheriff Stone tries to stop him, and his car gets flipped over by one such bomb, and the Crybaby Clown then proceeds to pull up next to him with a very frightened looking Sheriff Stone telling himself over and over that man babies aren't real. At which point, Crybaby Clown points out that very much hurts his feelings, and does point out that this is going to now be a new town run by the Crybaby Clown, and then proceeds to ask him if he seems cranky or if he's just thirsty, and then proceeds to pull out one of his bombs, which then lands in between Sheriff Stone's legs. And Sheriff Stone leaps out of his squad car before the car itself blows up. Meanwhile, we meet a new character, Mayor Janet Nettles, who, as we find out, is the new mayor of Crystal Cove, following the disappearance of Mystery Incorporated and the arrest of Fred Sr. And yeah, of course, this is her first real problem that she's had to deal with as mayor, since for the most part, she's just been getting reelected, sworn back into office, and basically she's just getting into a position where she is now the mayor of Crystal Cove and is now being sworn into office so that she can actually do her job. But ironically enough, the first thing she has to deal with is an actual man baby that's just driving through town blowing shit up. And of course she immediately panics, wondering what she got herself into. And it's at this point where a mysterious individual tells her that it seems like she's gotten herself into a mystery. And this person, who for the time being it isn't really said who they are, but this person shows up and dressed to the nines in a trench coat, hat, and with their face covered, and with a muffled voice. And this somewhat new character shows up and proceeds to tell her Janet that it seems she stumbled onto a mystery, and when Mayor Nettles doesn't fully understand, the mysterious individual then pulls a file out of all of her pocket and revealing the pictures of the new Mystery Incorporated, and tells them that they're called Mystery Incorporated, and tells them that if she wants her town to survive, that she'll need to get them back together so they can protect the town from ghosts, as they do, and from ghosts, goblins, and all the other things that they've faced up until this point, as they do best. Otherwise, her reign as mayor is going to be very short-lived. And with that, the mysterious individual then climbs out the window and disappears. And of course, Mayor Nettles immediately takes her up on that and immediately starts looking into the Mystery Incorporated kids and who's missing. And of course, she decides to starts with Scooby, because the mysterious individual suggested that they start with him and then find all the others. Since obviously she knows where the Mystery Incorporated, where the rest of the Mystery Incorporated are, but she's going to need to figure out where they are and figure it out from there. And of course, what we do find out is that Scooby is very much having a bit of a rough time at the farm. As we quickly find out, the farm is basically a glorified prison. Basically, Scooby is kind of just forced to be stuck in there, and every time he tries to escape, he winds up getting locked in the hole. As we find out, he keeps getting locked in an underground. Well, you know what they're called in the military. They call it the hole. It's this concrete bunker thing with a steel door on it. And basically, the idea there with that is that you're supposed to, if an inmate or if somebody from the military is misbehaving, they use that to actually stick everybody within the hole, and then they're just supposed to stay in there until they stop misbehaving. And I'm not entirely sure if they are able to use that now. I don't think that military is allowed to use those anymore, but they exist. They did exist. I'm not sure 100% certain if they still exist, but in any case, the farmer that's in charge of the farm then proceeds to scoop Scooby out of the hole and tells him if he had fun with his little escape attempt, and then proceeds to escort him back to the main farmhouse and tells him that if he tries to escape again, he'll face much more serious consequences. And it's at this point where Scooby then proceeds to walk into the barn, where he strikes up a conversation with the cow, who obviously the cow isn't really paying attention to what Scooby is doing. But and of course Scooby then tells the cow, more specifically to himself, that he had to escape, and points out that if he had somebody he loved, that the cow would actually do the same thing, and does point out that it wasn't really his choice, and that he did it for the sake of his friends, and then proceeds to pull out a picture that he hid under the pile of straw that Scooby uses as a bed, and points out that he has to get them all back together, otherwise he wins, and then flips it over to reveal that there's actually a picture of Professor Pericles on the reverse side. But does point out that it's only a matter of time before he escapes, and he will eventually succeed. They can't keep keeping him in there. And sure enough, the very next thing he tries, he does wind up succeeding. He proceeds to actually leave, grabs a branch from the nearby tree, and uses that to actually sneak under the electric fence. And he only gets caught because it winds up landing on his tail, and it doesn't clear it completely. But by that point, it's too late, and he is able to fully escape, and the farmer is unable to actually catch up with Scooby, even though he does threaten Scooby with his shotgun, which it's a little mature for a show like this, but it's fine. I mean, this is supposed to be a more adultish show, so it makes sense. But AK Scooby then proceeds to run away from the farm and into a road, where he's seemingly almost hit by a car until it stops, and then Janet Nettles proceeds to poke her head out of the window and tells him to get in. And sure enough, he does. And Scooby, of course, doesn't know who this person is. He has never met Janet before. He has no idea who Janet is or what her deal is. And of course, Janet then proceeds to explain how she's actually a friend of Mystery Incorporated, and how she's actually the new member of the town, and that she's looking for the rest of the gang. And of course, Scooby tells Scooby that she needs his help, but Scooby refuses, pointing out that obviously he needs to find the rest of his friends. At which point Mayor Nettles then proceeds to pull out a dossier of all of Mystery Inc.'s last known locations. She has no idea. She has no idea where they are beyond that, just their last general known locations, and tells Scooby that the rest is up to him, and wishes him good luck. And of course, Scooby then takes up the dossier and does it to go off to go find his friends. But before he leaves, he asks Janet Nettles if he can have some Scooby snacks. At which point, we then cut to the military camp where Shaggy is currently interned, and what we find out is that even though he falls in line with the Sarge, no problem, but as we quickly find out, he not only does the sergeant give him a hard time over his beard, which as we find out, his goatee just kind of has a mind of its own and keeps regrowing itself. So he kind of points out that he's not going to be able to regrow it. And when the sergeant asks him if he takes him for a fool, Shaggy points out that he probably shouldn't answer that. At which point, Scooby actually winds up barging into the barracks with a tank, with one of the nearby tanks, because of course it's a military camp. Of course they have a tank, and of course then Paul proceeds to pop his head out of the tank and tells Shaggy that he's and tells the sergeant to leave Shaggy alone. And of course Shaggy is very happy to see Scooby and immediately climbs into the tank and immediately gives his friend a hug. While the sergeant tries to rally the rest of his men, and orders them to actually take defensive formations. But what we find out, and this is heavily implied, is that everybody there is a teenager, and they immediately panic at the first sign of danger, except for the sergeant, and the sergeant just kind of becomes very disappointed in the rest of his recruits, while Scooby and Shaggy almost run him over with the tank and out of the other side of the barracks. At which point that then cuts to where Fred is, and it's not stated where Fred is. But what I should mention is that he's apparently been wandering around for a very long time trying to find Brad Childs and Judy Reeves. And to the point where not only are his clothes torn, he's missing a shoe, but he's also grown a massive beard that he's using his ascot to hold closed. So, yeah, he's walking around. He's basically looks like a hobo. And sure enough, when Shaggy and Scooby, and sure enough, it's because of his hobo-like appearance that nobody's giving him the time of day. He's constantly going around each town that he comes across, trying to find his parents by basically just going door to door and asking if his parents live there. And of course, nobody gives him the time of day. Mainly because he's a hobo, but partly because they don't know anybody by the name of Brad Childs or Judy Reeves. They have no idea who he's talking about. But of course, as Shaggy is actually as Fred is actually currently knocking on his next door, Shaggy and Scooby show up in their tank and are very happy to see Fred, having finally found him, and also immediately comment on his hobo-like appearance and about what happened to him. And of course, Fred is just so out of it that he remarks that he didn't even notice. But of course, it's at this point where Shaggy and Scooby then reveal what they actually came for, which is that they came to get him. And of course, Fred immediately denies the fact that the chance to go back, pointing out that he's not going to go back until he finds his parents. He openly admits that he's not leaving until he finds his parents. But of course, Shaggy and Scooby immediately insist that he should come back, pointing out that the town is currently being terrorized by a weird man baby who is currently driving around town and blowing things up. And of course, while Fred still isn't very interested and proceeds to just kind of give them a cold shoulder, his attitude changes immediately when he finds out that the criminal is actually dressed like a killer baby clown. And of course, this causes Fred's ears to perk up, and he immediately jumps at the opportunity to catch the Crybaby Clown, because as we find out, and as he explains, he quickly points out that catching a criminal of that caliber would immediately make him a legendary trapper. As we find out, somebody tried to catch a killer psychotic murderous baby back in the day using a similar trap, and it did wind up working. It did wind up catching the baby, but Fred, to his knowledge, points out that he doesn't even know he doesn't even know if anybody's ever caught a killer psychotic baby who was also a man. And of course, he points out that he's more than happy to trap them, to help trap him, but also points out that the second he does, he's immediately leaving Crystal Cove to go and find his parents again, which Shaggy and Scooby immediately point out is fair. But in any case, they then proceed to arrive in town, where they quickly notice that everything is deserted, and Fred steps out to take a look around, pointing out as such that the town seems to be deserted and nobody seems to be around. But then they see a silhouette of the Crybaby Clown's car carriage, and Shaggy points out that he doesn't seem like it's quite abandoned. And sure enough, the Crybaby Clown immediately pulls out onto the main road of Crystal Cove and immediately sees Fred, and immediately tries to charge at him, throwing bombs at him and trying to hurt him, and quickly points out that he didn't think they would become he doesn't know who they are, but he does point out that he doesn't very much like new faces, and points out that if they're indeed coming back to cause trouble, then he'll have no choice but to deal with them first. And sure enough, then proceeds to actually start throwing bombs at Fred, who for some reason isn't smart enough to realize that he needs to get in the mystery machine. He doesn't realize that it would be a lot easier to outrun the Crybaby Clown in the mystery machine than it would be on foot. And of course, Shaggy and Scooby then holler at him to get out of there, but of course he doesn't realize he needs to get in the mystery machine, so he just keeps running through back alleys and keeps going that way. While Scooby insists that they need to do something, but then discovers that Shaggy is actually currently cowering under the glove compartment inside the mystery machine. And Scooby sarcastically remarks that the military schools just did seem to do Shaggy a whole lot of good, which is not at all. And to be fair, we don't know how long Shaggy was there, but given the fact that they were still doing introductory things, I get the feeling he's only been there about a week. I get the feeling he hasn't even been there a full week, actually. The fact that he hasn't even gone through any rigorous training or anything like that. He only got his hair cut, and the sergeant was just giving him a hard time about his beard. So, yeah, of course that goes back to the question of how long Shaggy was there, but the show doesn't answer that, so I'm just speculating. But in any case, Fred is still running away from the Crybaby Clown again, trying to run through back alleys to try and get as far away from the Crybaby Clown as possible, when he's suddenly caught in a net and pulled into a back alley. And the Crybaby Clown, unable to actually find Fred, eventually gives up chasing him and runs off. At which point Fred is revealed to have been rescued by the mysterious stranger, who of course Fred immediately recognizes the trap that he's in, and of course the mysterious stranger remarks that he should, because he's the one who made it, and then proceeds to cut him free and makes a sarcastic remark about his beard. And of course, having picked up on the mysterious stranger's body language, and also the mysterious stranger's language, the regular language in general, Fred quickly realizes that the mysterious stranger that he's talking to was actually Velma in disguise. And sure enough, the mysterious stranger then does indeed unmask themselves to reveal that they are in fact Velma. So yeah, I said it was a somewhat new character, except not really. It was just Velma trying to orchestrate everything to get Mystery Incorporated back together. And of course, because she's still somewhat wearing her disguise, Scooby and Shaggy immediately barge into the back alley where they are. And not fully understanding that that's actually Velma, they try to attack her to save Fred, only for her to unmask herself and reveal that it is indeed her. And once they realize it's a false alarm, they immediately pull Velma into a hug. And Velma sarcastically remarks that they should have gotten this much affection when they were dating. At which point, the four members of Mystery Incorporated, now in the Mystery Machine, then proceed to drive up to the cliff that overlooks the town. And what we find out is that Crybaby Clown has just destroyed a whole bunch of things, and there's just smoke everywhere. There's just smoke sticking out from several different parts of the town. And of course, Velma points out that she's glad that they've actually gotten back together, because as she points out, it's been hell since they all left. And of course, she points out that she hasn't been able to actually solve any of the things by herself, because obviously she loves the idea of mystery solving, but hasn't been able to come up with any clues, and realizes that she needs the rest of Mystery Incorporated to do it. And of course, Fred immediately apologizes for the fact that he broke up the gang, pointing out that it was nothing personal. Even though she openly admits that it was, pointing out that obviously she kept the idea of the fact that Angel Dynamite is secretly Cassidy Williams. She kept that entire thing secret and hasn't been telling anybody. And she does point out that if she had told somebody, that Mr. Incorporated would have likely still been together. And of course she then proceeds to point out that obviously things have been a little bit weird since obviously the gang broke up. But she does point out that she also points out that obviously she hasn't heard either tale of the remaining Mystery Incorporated members from the original gang. And when Fred asks her if she knows what's happened to them, she remarks that she doesn't. As far as she knows, Mr. E just kind of vanished off the face of the earth, so nobody knows what happened to him there. She's been in regular contact with Cassidy, but obviously, since it's Cassidy, Velma hasn't been giving her the time of day, and it's just been kind of shunning her, since obviously, she lied to everybody, and has been kind of trying to keep everybody, trying to manipulate everybody and trying to get the gang back together. But And of course, obviously, she doesn't they don't really trust Angel anymore after she lied to them. So obviously, they're not going to take her word for it. And then obviously, there's Professor Pericles, who who Velma thinks just kind of disappeared and assumes he drowned in the case of the pieces of the Splank Spirit disc. And it's at this point where Scooby confesses that he's actually seen Professor Pericles. He reveals that he's seen Pericles and he stole the 2 pieces of the Splank Spirit disc that they know about, which causes Velma to immediately go into a panic, realizing that if he finds the remaining pieces, who knows what will happen. But Fred merely reassures her that they don't need to worry about that right now, pointing out that obviously Professor Pericles doesn't know where the other remaining pieces are, and it could take months or even years for him to find it. And points out that in the meantime they should just focus with the mystery at hand, which is to deal with the Crybaby Clown. Does point out that the last thing the person they need to actually recruit is Daphne, which of course Velma points out might be a little bit difficult. And then what we find out is that Daphne currently has a boyfriend, and not just any boyfriend. As we find out, it is a very famous actor. As we quickly find out, it is actually a guy who is very much a parody of Taylor Lautner, called Baylor Hotner, who I should mention. And then this is the thing: he plays the Were-Turtle in Dusk, as opposed to Taylor Lautner, who plays the werewolf in Twilight. So it's very much a thing. And what we find out is that he's actually there researching a role to play for the upcoming movie Dusk Force Still Dusk, which of course is very funny. But of course, it quickly becomes apparent that while he was there, he took an interest in Daphne and started dating her. And of course, this is very much a dream come true for Daphne, because she loves the Dusk novels. Obviously, she's going to be head over heels in love to be able to be dating an actor from one of her favorite movies. So, of course, she's going to be happy about that. But Fred isn't so happy about that. As we find out, he's very miffed about the fact that Daphne has moved on and started dating another guy, and doesn't really know how to cope with it. Obviously, he was the one who dated Daphne first. He was very much in love with her. He even proposed to her in the last season. But obviously, he broke all of that off to go chase his parents, who he doesn't even know where they are, by the way. And obviously, it seems like Daphne has actually moved on. So, obviously, Fred insists that he's not going to let something like this slide, and immediately gets out of the mystery machine and immediately stomps over to the bloody steak where Daphne and Baylor are actually eating. And he gets close enough to actually hear their conversation. He winds up looking into the window and is able to hear them through the window. And what we find out is that of course Baylor apparently has delivered a baby from a monkey, which Daphne finds impressive. And he does point out that he has done a lot of things and a lot of charity work all over the world. And this causes Daphne to realize that she's never even been farther than Gatorsburg and would love to go with him somewhere sometime. And of course, Baylor immediately points out that he's actually going to be filming a preview in Africa for a product called Jean Shorts, or rather a product called Green Shorts, I should mention. And basically what the concept of this is, it's made out of local grasses, so it's environmentally sustainable and it's locally sourced. So yeah, it's actually a pretty fun idea. But and obviously I can't not mention the fact that Baylor thought that the best way to promote or rather his agent probably, but Baylor thought the best way to promote this new product that is designed to be sustainable is that apparently he decided to wrap the whole thing, which is funny as hell. But and of course, he even admits that he is more than that. Even though he's been all over the world, he does admit that he's more than just a pretty face and a pair of abs, and which is really funny. But does point out that he's just happy to be able to spend time with Daphne. And of course, hearing this entire thing, Fred becomes increasingly distressed and starts leaning up against the window and starts sobbing a little bit. But of course, when Daphne and Baylor eventually come out, and Fred tries to go and greet Daphne, obviously because of Fred's appearance, but Daphne mistakes him for a hobo, pointing out that they don't really have those in Crystal Cove and haven't had one before. And suggests that they should give him money, at which point Baylor pulls out a protein bar, gives it to Fred, and then proceeds to leave. And of course Fred becomes very distressed by this, pointing out that obviously she didn't recognize him. Obviously, he's very upset about that. And of course the rest of the gang then proceed to console him, pointing out that obviously she's moved on, but does point out that they're very sorry for what happened. And of course, they then proceed to go meet with Janet Nettle, since obviously they don't have their full gang, but they have enough of the members that they should be able to do something. And And of course, they then proceed to arrive at the town hall, where of course Fred still can't let go of the fact that Daphne didn't recognize him, and Velma keeps pointing out that there's more to worry about. But of course, they then proceed to follow Janet Nettles and Sheriff Stone, who and Janet very much thanks Mystery Inc. for actually agreeing to come back and agreeing to help them solve their mystery. And immediately tells them that things have been going very south, and does appreciate the fact that they came back to help them. Except Sheriff Stone then proceeds to immediately contradict us, telling her to speak for herself. And what we find out is that Sheriff Stone doesn't really like the new mayor all that much. As we quickly find out, Sheriff Stone, and this is partially because he's biased towards Fred Jones Sr., but also because apparently it's in a charter somewhere, but according to himself, according to Sheriff Stone, and he openly says this, and Mayor Nettles denies that this is true, but according to himself, it's apparently in the town charter where, in the event that the previous mayor is arrested, the sheriff immediately assumes all corresponding duties as emergency mayor, and for that reason, he doesn't accept Mayor Nettles as the new mayor, like at all. As he points out, he should be mayor. He thinks he should be mayor, but obviously Mayor Nettles butts her head with him, pointing out that that's not how democracy works, and points out that she was elected to lead the people. And very much so. That is indeed a point. Obviously, the town charter doesn't work if the whole I am emergency mayor thing doesn't work if the person is actually elected and put in charge. Obviously, that's a very big thing. But of course, she then proceeds to ask him if the Mystery Inc. get the ready to see what's on the other side of the door, and Scooby and Shaggy immediately perk up at the idea, thinking that it's possibly food, and answers if that is indeed what is on the other side of the door. Then the answer is a heck yes. And they then proceed to barge into the room and into a conference where they quickly find out that everybody from the entirety of Crystal Cove is there, and of course, for some reason, everybody in Crystal Cove is happy to see them, and of course everybody is very confused. But Velma chalks it up to the fact that they hate them until they absolutely need them, at which point they're beloved. And does point out that's very much a crowd mentality thing. At which point, the Rogers actually get up, having noticed that their son and his dog have actually returned to Crystal Cove, and are obviously very confused about why he's there. And also let it slip that they were kind of hoping they would be able to keep him away forever. They imply that the reason that they thought he was good, that they basically just locked him and Scooby up. They don't even deny that. They quickly refer to Shaggy's military camp as a prison, and Scooby's farm that he was trapped in as a pound. And while they do correct themselves, it's very clear the fact that they intended to keep Scooby and Shaggy apart possibly forever. That was the idea. But of course that didn't wind up working. And of course Shaggy immediately comes up with a brilliant idea to actually figure out how to lie to them, and claims that he was actually made general and that Scooby's there to help him on a secret mission, which of course is a straight up lie because Shaggy wasn't there long enough to be promoted, much less to general. But of course the parents then proceed to actually completely buy it, and of course with that, Mystery Inc. is then filled in about the fact that the Crybaby Clown is actually attacking everybody, and Mystery Inc. then insists that they're actually going to catch Crybaby Clown and take him down. But then there's a loud scratching noise, and everybody quickly turns around to discover that Crybaby Clown has actually come into the meeting with them, and has actually scratched up the chalkboard that's in there, and tells them that it's all a very touching reunion, but does point out that obviously he's currently putting a throttle on the town's tourism, and points out that if they want that, obviously hiring Mr. Inc. to actually catch him and contain him, he points out that that's not going to work. He quickly points out that obviously the only way to get rid of him is to pay him for protection. And obviously, and they immediately insist that they collect $5 million and proceed to give it to him. And of course, it's at this point where Sheriff Stone immediately jumps at the opportunity to get rid of Mr. Incorporated and passes around his hat for collection. But of course, Mystery Inc. insists that they don't need to be paid to capture and keep the town safe. And although Shaggy does admit that it would be nice, but Velma then proceeds to elbow him when he starts talking, and of course Fred proceeds to point out that obviously he's more than happy to trap him, and all they need to do is figure out what to do and how to trap him. But and of course, Velma immediately comes to Fred and asks him what the plan is to actually catch this guy. But then what we quickly find out is that Fred's mind, in the time he's been gone, has gone fuzzy. As we quickly find out, all of his trapping knowledge has become kind of stagnant, and he hasn't really had a chance to actually hone his skills, as it were. So all of his trapping knowledge is seemingly gone. He doesn't really remember how to make traps. He doesn't remember any of the things he used to do. And of course, the Crybaby Clown immediately remarks that that's tragic, but then proceeds to blow up. Then proceeds to remark that they'd offer, and then proceeds to lock everybody inside a town hall, and everybody immediately panics while Jen immediately looks for the light and asks Sheriff Stone to get it. But Sheriff Stone is too busy curled into a fetal position to actually go and look for the light, and eventually everybody just makes a beeline for the door, only for the Crybaby Clown to immediately appear in front of them and tells them that there's no exit here, and then proceeds to pull out a massive diaper bomb, which is as you would imagine it is. It is a giant bomb shaped as a diaper, and of course Crybaby Clown immediately sarcastically adds that the baby needs to be changed before dropping the bomb in the middle of town hall, and it blows up town hall with everybody in it. Although everybody does wind up managing to escape before it blows up, but everybody just barely manages to escape. Everybody is obviously caught in Blast Zero, and obviously, and I don't think anybody is hurt, but everybody very much gets to it very close. But in case Sheriff Stone then proceeds to sarcastically remark that the supposed Mayor Nettles did a really good job of keeping them safe, and does insist that if she needs him, she knows where to find him, and but insists that he's keeping the 50 cents he managed to collect from collection, and proceeds to wander off. And of course, the gang immediately realizes that they're going to be in very big trouble, but if they aren't able to catch Crybaby Clown, and obviously, Fred doesn't really understand why his trapping knowledge is seemingly failing him. At which point, Velma reveals that it's not just him. Her ability to find clues has also been kind of failing her a little bit. Obviously, she mentioned that a little bit, but she goes into a little bit more detail here about how she's been trying to follow leads and nothing. She hasn't been able to figure out anything on the Crybaby Clown. And then they also both ask Shaggy and Scooby what happened, if they feel any different, but obviously they just feel like it's business as usual, since obviously they didn't really help contribute to the mystery solving all that much, but mainly they just ate food, occasionally come across a lead, and mostly just run from danger, which just seems to be par for the course currently. They're probably the only members of Mystery Inc. whose mojo hasn't been affected, and it's eventually where Fred actually finally figures out why they don't feel the right. Obviously they've been out of the game for a while, but more importantly, he realizes that their team isn't complete, and of course points out that in order to actually feel complete and actually be able to actually function as a gang, they need to find Daphne. So they immediately, and of course Fred knows that there's an easy place for them to go look, and they immediately go and knock on Barty Blake's door. They immediately go to the Blake's manor and knock on the door, and obviously Barty Blake answers, and well, at first he doesn't fully recognize Fred. Once Fred reintroduces himself, Barty immediately knows who it is, but also isn't particularly happy to see Fred. Partially because he doesn't like Fred all that much, and for good reason, but because obviously from the last time they met, Fred broke Daphne's heart, and points out that she probably doesn't want to see him. But at which point, it's at this point where Daphne actually comes down to wonder who actually came to the door, and upon seeing Fred, who she seems to recognize now, she immediately tells her dad that she'll handle it, and immediately scolds Fred for coming back into her life, immediately telling him that he shouldn't have come here and that was a mistake. And obviously Fred points out that he missed her, and that obviously Mystery Inc. isn't the same without them. But and of course she insists that mystery solving isn't part of her anymore, and admits that she's kind of moved on from the whole mystery solving phase of her life. At which point Baylor immediately comes out and wonders who exactly it is she's talking to, and it's at this point where Daphne introduces them as her friend, as her people that she knows from school chums. She doesn't even acknowledge them as like a close-knit group of friends anymore. She just points out that's obvious that they're just cool school friends. And of course Baylor points out that maybe they want an autograph, and immediately pulls out several headshots of himself and starts signing them. While Daphne then proceeds to once again scold Fred, telling him that it was a mistake for him to come there, and obviously points out that obviously she's just happy now. She points out that she's happy dating Baylor because obviously she doesn't really, she obviously is happy to just be able to be in a fulfilling relationship with somebody who doesn't obsess with traps. And of course, when Fred doesn't fully understand what she's talking about, so she lays it out pure and simple. She doesn't want to see him again, and tells him to leave. And with that, she then proceeds to walk back into the house, where conveniently Baylor has actually run out of ink to actually sign headshots, and of course she tells him that she just tells him that autograph time is over, and proceeds to escort him back into the house. At which point she slams the door, and obviously everybody seems to be disturbed about the fact that she's not coming back, except for Fred, who for some reason, and I'm pretty sure he's in the and I'm definitely sure he's in denial here. Fred insists that she's definitely in and she's definitely part of the gang again, and insists that obviously she's not, and that obviously she's going to come back and help them with traps, even though everybody else immediately denied that, pointing out that obviously it didn't seem like she actually meant what she said. But Fred merely points out that all they need to do now is actually set a trap. Now that he thinks he knows that Daphne is part of the gang again, he insists that now his trap solving knowledge has actually come back, and he's able to actually start solving mysteries in full force. And to that end, immediately goes into setting a trap. And what we find out is that his plan is to actually trap the Crybaby Clown in a fake donut shop in a part of town that the Crybaby Clown hasn't hit yet. And the idea is to make it seem like it's some sort of zombie donut shop. And the idea is to trap the Crybaby Clown in a series of confectionaries, at which point Daphne will trap him in a giant donut. And the idea is that it's supposed to keep him from actually moving his arm, so he's not able to leave. And of course the idea is that when everybody's in place, they're able to actually finally trap the Crybaby Clown. And of course everybody else immediately denies the validity of this plan. Scooby and Shaggy more so about their bait, but also because everybody else just points out the very obvious fact that Daphne didn't seem like she was into it. She doesn't seem like she's going to come back. But Fred insists that she's going to come back, and does point out that she'll eventually be there. But at which point he immediately springs his trap in the action. And sure enough, right on cue, Crybaby Clown shows up, sees Scooby and Shaggy dressed up as zombies, and they immediately go into a zombified sales pitch about how delicious their donuts are, and about how they are made with real brains. Which and of course Crybaby Clown kind of denies the idea that he wants the donuts, pointing out that they're probably very sugary and probably not very good for him. But of course Scooby insists that they're delicious, which causes Crybaby Clown to become angry because obviously he thinks Scooby called his mom a liar. But it's of course it's at this point where Scooby and Shaggy immediately go into the trap, and it's at this point where the front of the facade for the fake donut shop comes down and traps Crybaby Clown with the giant donut sign, and proceeds to pull him into a series of conveyor belts where he's sure enough trapped inside a bunch of flour, cooking dough, and a bunch of donut dough, and a bunch of other things that are supposed to immobilize him. And of course everything goes off without a hitch. The trap immediately works, except for the part where Daphne is supposed to come into play. And of course, Fred immediately tries to insist that Daphne is coming, and immediately gives Daphne a clue as if she's there. And of course, she isn't. She's not coming back. But Fred is completely in denial about the fact that she's not coming back. So obviously, the Crybaby Clown is able to somewhat break free as he's trying to give Daphne her non-existent cues. But and of course, he immediately barges out of the donut shop to wonder where the hell Daphne is, and he starts looking around, with the Mr. Mystery Inc. joining him, and eventually the Crybaby Clown does manage to free himself, and does point out that maybe they're starting to think Mystery Incorporated doesn't like him very much, and also then proceeds to give him a word of advice, which is revealed that they actually built their donut shop next to a fireworks shop, which he points out is a very stupid and possibly dangerous idea. So, and with that, he then proceeds to fold one of his bottle bombs into the fireworks shop and proceeds to drive off. And sure enough, and of course, Mystery Incorporated have to run like hell to get out of the range of the blast, because obviously it's a very big blast and an entire shop is going up. But of course, the shop then proceeds to explode, and Velma points out that if the people of Crystal Cove didn't hate them before, they certainly do now. But then of course Fred points out that obviously he failed, and while Scooby and Shaggy immediately reassure him, with Shaggy pointing out that obviously it was a group effort and they all failed as a team. But of course, Fred then proceeds to point out that they're not a team, at least not without Daphne. And he does point out that now he realizes that she's a crucial member of the team, and he also now realizes that she's never coming back. And sure enough, he also remarks that this is the first time the bad guy got away, and it's entirely his fault. It is a very sad little moment where he's unable to actually catch the Crybaby Clown, and the Crybaby Clown escapes. So, yeah, very sad moment. Basically, Mr. Incorporated is mostly back together, but without Daphne, they're not a complete team, and they'll never actually be a team. So, yeah, that does wind up being a very big problem for Fred. Obviously, Fred is realizing now that Daphne is indeed a crucial member of the team, and realizes that without her, their team is never going to be able to catch a bad guy again. Obviously, they quickly realize that they're going to need Daphne's help to actually catch some bad guys, but also it doesn't kind of really help the fact that he built a team with the intent of using Daphne for it, and Daphne didn't show up because obviously she's not going to show up. But yeah, it is indeed very unfortunate that is indeed what happened. But obviously this does set up a new thing in the show where obviously Mystery Incorporated, they're coming back from a hiatus. They obviously have been broken up for a while, so obviously they're still getting into their mojo, and obviously they're going to need to relearn how to actually do what they do best. But first and foremost, they need to find a way to actually get Daphne to become part of their team again. Obviously that is a very big thing, and they need to figure that out. But in any case, yeah, I mean, I am interested to see where that's going to go, and I am interested to see how Daphne is actually going to wind up joining the gang again, because obviously she has shown no interest in actually rejoining the gang, so it would have to be something very important to actually get her to rejoin. Obviously, something would have to happen in her life to actually get her to rejoin and actually reconsider not being part of the gang. But for right now, I do think we will just have to figure out what that is in a later episode. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this review. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks down in my way saying thanks. So be sure to check those out. Links down in the description. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out both of the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!